Hi, I'm Frank Cumella. I'm a partner at Daversa Partners. I lead the firm's compute and infrastructure practice. We're here with Wes Cummins, founder and CEO of Applied Digital. I've had the pleasure of working with Wes for the last 18 months and really excited to be here. Wes, thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you've had a pretty exciting start to 2025.
Yes.
You have the Macquarie round, which came in, and then just last week, another $400 million investment.
Yep.
And so it seems like things are moving in a really positive direction.
Yeah, it feels like things are, accelerating capital formation and the company's cost of capital. So the capital formation is accelerated, our cost of capital is dropping, and so that's a really great position for us to be in going into the remainder of the year.
Yeah. And the $5 billion Macquarie round, from what I understand, is the largest growth equity round in data center history. So quite the accomplishment. And so I'd love to let's start by going back a few years.
Sure.
Because we've had a really crazy last 3-4 years in our ecosystem. In 2021, we're coming out of a global pandemic. Software companies are raising at a 30 to 40x multiple.
Yeah.
We come to realize that those companies are overvalued. There's an economic downturn. And then fast forward to about 18 months ago, we're literally rebuilding the world's internet.
Yes.
From the ground up.
Yeah.
From the data centers, the network infrastructure, semiconductors, building custom compute clouds, and now you're building this incredible facility in Ellendale, North Dakota, right smack in the middle of this market.
And now we're back into this big hardware infrastructure cycle where we're, like you said, rebuilding effectively, the internet, except we're doing it at a much more accelerated pace. And the thing that's here now is the network infrastructure, the fiber infrastructure that was not there before, so we can do it at an accelerated pace. Because if you remember, in original internet, built out a lot of things, but people couldn't connect. You didn't have a phone to connect. Everyone was doing dial-up, and so you couldn't consume all of this infrastructure. Now we have those pipes for consumption, and so I think we're going to see a much more accelerated pace of build out.
Yep. And you've scaled from 5 megawatts to hundreds of megawatts in a very short period of time. How do you pull that off? Is it just expert engineering?
It's been engineering. Having the power available has been a big deal, and then we've had some significant supply chain wins, because that's the other big part is supply chain. So there's everything in, it was originally in semiconductor, right? In 23 and 24, we read about you couldn't get the GPUs that you wanted, you couldn't get the network gear you wanted, but it's easier to solve wafer throughput and advanced packaging on semiconductors than it is, in my opinion, to build, get power, get permitting, get supply chain, construct data center capacity. So I mean, that was the big piece for me in 23 when we leaned in on this. I said, look, it's going to be really hard to get GPUs, and then all of a sudden that supply chain will be fixed. But this is such a different design and power consumption and cooling that the data center capacity is going to become an issue in, I thought as early as 24, but definitely by 25, and we started seeing a lot about this in 24, and I think it just gets worse in 25 and 26. And then, at some point the market will kind of catch up with it, but supply chain has been a big win lately, where we've been in a position to pick up some key supply chain components when some other programs, some other construction programs were pushed because their power was pushed.
So have you created the blueprint for what a state-of-the-art next-gen AI data center should look like, from a move forward strategy?
Yeah, I think, for us, there will be improvements for sure. You're always going to have improvements. You're going to learn lessons going through it. And we had iterations of learning where we started with, hey, why don't we convert our Bitcoin facilities? And then we're like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And then why don't we build an ultra low cost HPC facility that we did in Jamestown? We said, that works, but I don't think it works for what we want to do for going after, the biggest customers in the world. And so we've had that iteration through, and then there will definitely be improvements, but the facility that we're building, it's really unique in that, you can create the largest, or at least one of the largest supercomputers in the world, because it's built with such a density, and the way we built it through 3 levels, and you can run network core through the middle. You can, in theory, interconnect every one of, because there's a distance limitation on InfiniBand. So in theory, you can interconnect this to every single GPU to every GPU and create one large supercomputer. So it's a really unique facility, but there will definitely be improvements going forward.
I've heard you say from the silicon up. So can you walk me through that philosophy? Because I feel like you were just touching on that.
So you mean the silicon up
in terms of instead of repurposing or refurbishing, the entire data center?
Yeah. So this was designed. There are specific network architectures, and it's more around networking on this when you're designing the facilities. So, and when you're dealing with GPU compute or ASIC compute versus CPU compute, this is how your power density goes up. But we've moved from a world where latency outside the data center was everything. So when you're watching your tiki-takis or any of those kind of things, like you need this kind of outside the data center latency to be extremely low. We've moved to a world where it's about latency inside the data center being ultra low. And so, designing around that network topology is really what we've focused on for this building, and that's what we'll focus on going forward.
Can you explain why, that is incredibly important to the market in terms of being able to serve this AI boom from an infrastructure?
I think you just you're going to need constant flexibility going forward. So that, we're seeing this innovation just go at a more and more rapid pace, and as compute becomes more powerful, it's going to go even faster and even faster. And so you kind of don't know what the future necessarily looks like from a compute architecture perspective. So for pre-training, we're doing all these foundational models or frontier models. You need massive amounts of compute all interconnected. And then if you move to, everyone's thought is in an inference world, right, then you need, you don't necessarily need these interconnected, maybe in much smaller clusters. But it depends on what inferencing looks like in the future and what the inference application is. And I think there's going to be so many changes, there already has been from 23 to 25. I think we're going to see more rapid, changes happening. And then it depends on the application going forward, right? I've talked quite a bit about, I think the next big, for the last, call it 9 months, I think the next big application for what we're doing on the compute side is humanoids and robotics. And so that's going to be a constant training and inferencing, same motion at the same time, where you have kind of this continuous improvement in learning. And so, I think that looks more like a blended training, inferencing type architecture. And so, with all of this, you just need the ability to have very flexible architectures, network architectures for the future to make sure that the compute is optimized for the application we're going after and for all of the evolving improvements coming.
How long do you think it's going to take for us to, get ramped up from a data center capacity standpoint in the United States? Because from what I hear, there's no capacity anywhere here anymore, and so everyone's looking to Europe. And so are we over-indexing on that? Are we overbuilding? Or do you ever get concerned about that?
I think it's unique. Eventually markets come into equilibrium. It's just a matter of how long does it take. Now, this market is interesting in that electricity has been the limiting factor. Supply chain is the limiting factor. So it's harder to go and way overbuild in the marketplace because of those kind of natural limiters that are in the market. There will be some in Europe. We've spent some time looking at that. I think there will be a significant amount in South America. But right now, if you look at the data center market, the U.S. has always been significantly larger than anything else, and I think that will continue to be the case. And a lot of this is around, data privacy laws that are in other countries that it just makes it harder. It's hard to be using, someone's info that's in the U.S. in a Canadian data center, for example, and it's even harder, in European. But you're going to have people talk a lot about sovereign clouds, and I think you will see a lot of that inside of different, EU, US, Asia. You will see a lot of that, but the US is going to remain by far the biggest growth market.
Yeah. Let's talk energy for a little bit, because obviously that's a limiting factor, but probably the most important one.
Yeah.
This is a very physical business, and so we're seeing data centers being built next to advantageous energy sources, now all over the country. Is that what Ellendale is essentially, which gives you a major edge?
Yeah. So what I would say, if you ask me, the number one thing our company was built on was our ability to find large amounts of low cost energy. And what we have focused on, since the beginning of the company is something we call stranded power. And this is power in the US that can be generated or is generated and goes unused or can't be fully utilized. And stranded power is created in two ways. Either a large industry goes out of business in an area, so like in Rockdale, Texas, and an Alcoa aluminum smelter, went out of business there. They took it offline, and so you left with all of this electrical infrastructure and generation that now is no longer being used. And then the other way it's created, which is what we focused on more, is renewables. So when people are building renewables, they build for generating renewable energy credits. And so if you're in the business of building wind, we've tended to go a lot with wind. You're going to go where the wind blows the most and the land is the cheapest, and you'll get the most bang for your buck on credits. Well, so North Dakota is the 6th largest wind producing state in the nation and 48th or 49th in population. They generate over 2x the amount of electricity inside the state versus what they use. And our location in particular, there's I think close to 2 gigawatts of wind that feed into this substation. And when the wind is blowing, oftentimes the energy price, the electricity price runs negative. And then if it goes negative enough, they'll curtail, because there's this conception I think a lot of people have that if you can generate an electron somewhere in the US, you can use it anywhere else in the US, but you need the infrastructure to do that. And so it's faster to build out generation on renewables than it is to build out transmission. It takes 2 years to build a wind farm, but 15 years maybe for transmission, or 10 years for transmission. And so we're with the uniqueness of the AI workload, we're able to take the load to the point of generation and then more efficiently utilize this. And so we've been good at finding, in Ellendale we have 530 megawatts in an ESA there. I think we can go larger in that, and then at Jamestown we have 100, and we have this other pipeline that are these similar type of sites. And then, so that's been huge for us. And then there's the next step, which I haven't talked a lot about, which is, kind of stranded nat gas. And we have that in a few locations in the US, and you can take, turbines, nat gas, and create electricity out of that. And I think that'll be another way to do that. And then eventually you have to build, real generation.
So you're going to drill and use natural gas to power your data centers?
It's already being used, or it's already there. So for oil production, both in West Texas and North Dakota, I think in Pennsylvania, like it's a byproduct of the oil production, and they can't utilize it. A lot of times, it gets flared, and now so you figure out how to actually utilize this. Because you can see big changes in oil or in nat gas pricing across the country depending on whether you can pipe it. It's similar to the stranded wind power, the wind electricity. You have the energy there, and it can't be piped out and utilized, because you don't have the network infrastructure to do that. So, but that's been the biggest focus of the company. And then, we've built a great team who, develop, construction, operate data center around that, that kind of core talent that we have of finding this energy.
Yeah. So when we're saying drill, baby, drill, we're not talking about oil. We're talking about drilling for natural gas for energy purposes.
Yeah. Well, they drill for oil, and then that gas comes with the oil, and I wouldn't say a waste product, but they can't move it. There's not the pipeline infrastructure to move it to a way to utilize it. So we're not going to drill anything. This has already happened, and we're just, again, back to we didn't build the windmills, and we don't own that asset, but we're just moving there to take the load, like the use case near the power source, so you don't have to build that infrastructure to take it out and use it somewhere else.
And so from a growth perspective, next steps are just continuing to build more facilities, and the $5 billion is going to help support that. The extra $400 million is going to help support that. What are the growth goals?
That's we've talked about our pipeline. Another 1.6 gigawatts outside of Ellendale. So building Ellendale, we have through 25, 26, 27 to build the entire campus at Ellendale, that 400 megawatts of critical IT load. And then we have other campuses that we're in the process of marketing, and then we'll just, the idea is to see how much of that we can build. My focus is next 3 years. I think almost anything we can build, we can contract. So that's really the focus, is to continue to do that.
You envision we're just going to continue to build data centers in the United States to support this major AI boom for the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, right now for the foreseeable future, I know there's a lot of talk about we're creating a bubble in AI, and things always get overdone.
Laying all the fiber in the early 2000s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but if you go back again about kind of the difference between this and the original internet boom, and the original internet boom, did the stock market get overdone? Yeah. And did a lot of things get overdone? But I think we can all look back and say it was pretty revolutionary. Now, with the way our lives are, but the infrastructure now and the ability to use this as we produce it and kind of the speed at which things are going. And I think the new applications we see kind of up and coming, it's just a different.
I think you're right. Like the pace of innovation is just like well far and beyond what we were producing in the early 2000s. Though connecting to the internet was wildly important. It was the most important initiative. But
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, the pace of which we're replacing new business applications that were founded just 6 months ago, like I think with more existing infrastructure, like the thought process is that it's going to take a while to grow into that just because of how quickly we're innovating.
And it just like it feels like it's accelerating the pace of innovation dramatically, especially with AI and the new improvements in models like Grok 3 hit late last night, and so you have the new best model that's out there, and just the functionality of these, and going back to touching on kind of the humanoid aspects and their ability to actually code software, it's just going to accelerate the pace of this significantly. But it is still very infrastructure driven, right? It's like you need the compute to drive it.
Yeah, and in this very competitive market of producing AI infrastructure, it's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about your company. Naturally, it's like I'm under the impression that if you own the keys to the physical infrastructure, the physical world to be able to produce these results from a physical data center standpoint, you're going to be better positioned than like a marketplace model or other models that are producing GPU clouds.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of competition, at the application level, and we've watched that, from many different kind of tech evolutions over time, but the actual infrastructure is still going to drive all of that.
Yeah. Let's talk about your kind of investment journey, or at least like over the last 6 or so months. When we got introduced, NVIDIA was just coming on as a partner. Then a few weeks ago, Macquarie, gives you a $5 billion injectment, and then another 400 last week. Why is all this happening? Is this the market? Is it? It's probably all of this, but is it something you're doing that's different and differentiated in terms of what you're able to produce? Is it that this company has a head start and we need this infrastructure? It's critical to the development of AI. Why do you think this is happening? And then I'd also want to dive into, if you don't mind, what is the nature of the NVIDIA partnership? What does that mean to the business? And then we can kind of discuss the Macquarie investment.
Sure. So we got the investment from NVIDIA in early September of last year. We've had the relationship with them for significantly longer than that. So we're both a NCP with NVIDIA, so a cloud partner, and then as I'd mentioned, we kind of worked with their team on developing this infrastructure or the data center design. So we have a lot of familiarity there, and that's obviously has been fantastic for us. And then the other pieces that you were asking about, so I said in the middle of 23, was when I saw this, and I told my team we have to go and push on this. But the market clearly woke up to it in kind of the middle part of 24 as to kind of where the data center market, and just from my perspective, the amount of people I've talked to, the amount of new capital that's coming into the market, the people who want to participate in this market because they see the growth, and we were able to get the agreement with Macquarie, which is I think the largest infrastructure investor in the world. They're big in the data center market. They have been for years. So that comes with capital, but it also comes with a lot of experience in the data center market. So that was a really big one for us. And the reason I think we're attracting this is it'll seem rudimentary, but this is a physical asset. You can go to the site, you can see it, you can see what we're doing. You can, guys who know what they're doing can go through all the specs of it. And then if they know the market, then they'll realize that this is an extremely valuable asset given that it's a 2025 capacity. And that's one of the biggest points back to why we started down this path in the first place was the speed to market. But you've seen all of these things happen for us because people have really woke up to what's going on in the market, and then we find them or they find us, and then they see what we're doing. They see the building, they see how developed we are, how developed our team is, all of those things. And I think putting the capital forward with that is kind of their vote of confidence that we're significantly down the path in the right direction, and they want to be involved with our company because people provide capital to make money, right? And so they're expecting that this will do that for them.
Yeah. And From a talent perspective, we've obviously done some great work together.
Yes.
What is the message to other executives or engineers like in the market in terms of like why Applied Digital is doing something that's innovative, that's cutting edge, that is at the forefront of what this market needs? If you had to kind of sum that up in a couple sentences and attract the next rock star that ends up joining this company.
Yeah, I mean, what we've been able to attract people on is they see the opportunity, and they see that what we're doing, is the future of this industry specifically, but a big part of the future of technology. We're getting the opportunity to work with some of the biggest companies in the world to go and do this. And these are large projects, and they're exciting. I mean, this campus, when we build it in Ellendale, will be $4.5 billion in total, and so these are massive. I make a joke with my wife quite a bit about this, but when she sent me the latest Disney park see what it looks like for $1.8 billion in Japan, and I'm like, we're building $4.5 billion in Ellendale, North Dakota. It's not going to quite look like this.
A little bit more under the radar
yeah,
than
a little bit more.
Disney World.
but these are they're big, exciting projects. We're designing to kind of the state of the art in the data center. We're using state of the art cooling, mechanical designs, and then operations. And so, there's a lot of people we've been able to attract, and you guys have done a great job helping us to attract those people because they see this big runway in front of us, and we were, at the early stages, but we're also not. I think the other exciting part about us is we don't have kind of a legacy data center business that, this is going to be, if we do really well, it'll be 10% of the total part of the business or 20% or whatever that might be. It's just, it's a true kind of greenfield company build as well as, the greenfield sites. So it's an exciting time to be here.
I mean, for us, it's just been math, right? Like, this is a company that knows how to build something that's cutting into the market, that's next generation, and it's kind of like that concept of if you build it, they will come. And it's like, this is a business that is finishing one facility, is going to pop up 2 or 3 others pretty quickly, and that's going to equate to billions of. Actually, what does like a fully operational facility from a commercial standpoint? Like, what does that mean to the business? Like, whatever you could share.
Yeah, we've put these numbers out publicly, so I can share it. We've basically talked about per megawatt being, roughly $2 million of revenue. The revenue is a little harder to forecast because there's an electricity pass-through component of the revenue that can be variable.
Do you feel like, if Applied Digital is a baseball game, what inning are we in the journey of the business? Is it like 3 or 4? Like, has the game started yet?
Yeah. The funny part of this is talk about. We've been working on getting this hyperscale, contract done at our facility at Ellendale, and I tell the team I think we're just about to cross the starting line. Like that, putting that in place to me is crossing the starting line, right? It's definitely not the finish line, and so, like it feels first inning-ish to me for our company. This market is, who knows necessarily what markets do over a long period of time. I mean. I was talking to my team about this, and you look back and you go, okay, well, you're getting these contracts that are pretty long when you do the data center contracts. So you're talking, 15-year type contracts with renewals, and generally customers of this scale never leave those facilities. So, if you go, okay, 15 years, I look back and, I guess it's been 17 years since the iPhone was introduced, right? And kind of where the world has gone from there until now, and now we're moving at an accelerated pace. So it's just hard to forecast. 3 years out in tech.
What are you most excited about, and what keeps you up at night as a founder?
I'm the opportunity. This is it's the opportunity of a lifetime for me. But generally, I don't think people get this type of opportunity a lot in their life. So that's super exciting. Love the team that I work with, and we've accomplished a lot. And I always tell people that we're just getting started, right? The best is yet to come. There's plenty of things that keep me up at night. I have a lot of people that be like, well, you signed this contract, it's going to be celebratory and it'd be great. And I'm like, I've done this before, and you go from the stress of getting to that point, and then a new stress starts, right? Which is okay. So now I have this big contract that I have to execute on, right? And there's a huge amount of execution that goes into that. And luckily, with your guys' help too, we have a great team in place to execute. on these opportunities that are in front of us.
But like, what kind of CEO are you? Because you have your product CEO, you have your finance CEO, you have your commercial CEO. You got to partner them with the right people. You've done, from organic chemistry to hedge funds to Bitcoin to data centers. Like it's hard to put you in a box, which is great. You can do a lot, but like, how do you define yourself as a CEO?
I will tell you this specifically, as you mentioned, organic chemistry. If I were to need to hire someone, like if we needed to do organic chemistry here, because I have the experience of taking it, I know I'm not good at it. And so I definitely need to get someone to focus on that. But, obviously my background is investing. I think the things that I'm very good at are spotting trends in the market that we can, benefit from as a company, which was one of the biggest pieces for us back in 23. Good at making deals, getting the right kind of deal structure for us. But the things that I don't know how to build data centers, right? So we went out and found someone who's really good at doing that. Found a whole group of people that are really good at doing that. I don't know how to operate data centers, so we go find a really good group of people doing that. And then you helped us hire Laura recently as our COO. I wouldn't classify myself as a phenomenal people manager, and we focus on that because inside of our company, the things that create, in my opinion, great culture is one, having something really exciting to do, and then you have the right people. But managing the people and the structure, the org structure appropriately, so that everyone feels like they have a career and not just a job, right? So there's a lot of upward mobility inside of the company, and we've put a lot of those pieces in place. And you guys have helped us do most of those pieces, but we put a lot of those pieces in place that I think really complement what I do, and then also really allow me to spend my time doing what I do best. And I think that's another big part of having the right team and the right people around you. But it's been a really great evolution over the last 12 months with that part of the business.
Yeah. Wes, thank you. Real pleasure. It's been like fantastic journey working with you. We're in the first inning, so it seems like we have the whole game hasn't even started yet. So I look forward to the future with us, and really appreciate your time. This has been incredible.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime.